trying to find just the right balance because there's nothing really challenging you. Because you don't have any real problems, and you're not on the earth. You're not standing on the earth anymore. You're in a bubble where you sort of like, maybe I'll try this, and maybe I'll just do protein now, and I'll do, you know what I mean? And you'll never find a balance because that's not a normal life. That's not organic living. That's not living like a human being, you know?
Joe Rogan's podcast hasn't just slipped this year, it's straight up spiraling, and every new episode makes that more obvious. What used to feel curious and open now feels locked in and aggressive, like Joe isn't exploring ideas anymore. He's just hammering the same ones over and over. The old Joe, the laid-back guy joking about DMT trips and weird dimensions, feels completely gone. In his place is this irritated, out-of-touch version who doesn't really talk with guests anymore. He talks at them, usually circling the same 4 or 5 political talking points like a broken record. It doesn't even matter who's sitting across from him now. Somehow the conversation always swerves into COVID-19 again, how California is supposedly a complete wasteland, how Austin, Texas is paradise, or a long stretch of conservative praise that feels forced and repetitive. It's gotten so predictable that longtime listeners have quietly stopped tuning in altogether. What's wild is that Joe's peers are finally saying the quiet part out loud, and they're doing it publicly. Just recently, veteran comedians like Bill Burr and Mark Maron called him out on major podcasts, and that alone says a lot. Now, to be fair, Mark Maron has been clashing with Joe since the early 90s, so that part isn't shocking. And Bill Burr hasn't been on Joe's show since 2021, so their criticism wasn't exactly out of nowhere either. But here's where it really gets uncomfortable. The real red flag isn't distant peers speaking up. It's Joe's own friends checking him on his own show, almost like they're trying to pull him back from the edge. Like when Joey Diaz snapped at Joe for obsessing over stuff that truly doesn't matter to either of them.
Have you seen any of that stuff on Japan? Mm-mm. See if you can find anything on the Japanese population crisis. They're having so few children in Japan that, like, in 3 generations, they could be in real trouble.
Ask you a question?
Yeah.
What the fuck's it got to do with me? I don't give a fuck about the Japs. What the fuck is wrong with you, Joe?
Well, I think about it with us. Because I think about it with, like, civilizations collapsing. I think about it what we've been talking about the whole day.
Yeah, but we don't have to worry about that.
I know. We don't have to worry about it.
You're
right. You're right.
This is the first podcast I'm done that I'm scared. You know what I'm saying? What the is wrong with you?
You're right.
Enough with this shit.
You're right.
And politics, enough.
I know.
COVID is over.
Have you seen any of that stuff on Japan? That moment wasn't random. It was frustration spilling out. That clip happened about 3 months ago, and honestly, if Joe had even slightly listened to Joey Diaz back then, this video probably wouldn't exist. But, as you can guess, Joe didn't listen at all. In fact, over the last few weeks, Joe feels more disconnected than ever. He's bending reality around his personal relationships, and it's showing hard. Take episode 2352 with James Tallarico, where Joe pushed back on calling Nick Fuentes a Holocaust denier, insisting that denying the Holocaust and debating the numbers are somehow different things. That's a strange hill to defend, especially when Joe suddenly finds his backbone only in moments like that. Because when people sit across from him who audiences actually want answers from, Joe goes completely silent. The sitting president, the vice president, even the current FBI director. And somehow, when Elon Musk publicly accused Trump of being on the Epstein list, with the FBI director sitting just feet away, Joe didn't say a word, not one follow-up, not one challenge. But suddenly, when Nick Fuentes is criticized, Joe jumps in to defend definitions and listeners are left shaking their heads.
We were talking about fake news. This is going to come up because it's been going on since we've been recording here. Elon and Trump seem to be in a bit of a spat, Joe. You want to check the tweet that Elon just put out a little bit ago?
Time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. Jesus Christ.
I'm not participating in any of that conversation
What
between
is
Elon
Have
and
a
Trump.
nice day, DJD. Someone should take his phone away.
They're going back and forth about different things. And
Yeah.
How does he know? Does he know that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files? Or does he have access to the Epstein files?
I don't know how he would, but I'm just staying out of the Trump-Elon thing. That's way outside my lane.
What the fuck are they doing?
I know my lane, and that ain't it.
I just don't. I mean, wow.
Joe even laughed about this later on his podcast with Danny Jones, brushing off the idea of pushing back against the FBI director about Epstein like it was ridiculous. That moment alone explained everything. This is why longtime listeners are fed up. Joe reaches around 24 million people every week, yet avoids real pressure when it matters most. He gives soft, friendly interviews to people he already agrees with while dodging accountability conversations entirely. It's clear there's a political bias now, and it's impossible to ignore. Still, Joe at least brings on actual politicians and scientists, professionals who know what they're talking about, which makes the missed opportunities even more frustrating. What's honestly even more frustrating than Joe refusing to push back is when he goes fully solo on politics and just starts talking unchecked. No fact-checking, no balance, just long political rants delivered like absolute truth, even when they're clearly not. And every time this happens, you can almost feel Jamie sitting there tense, ready to jump in and correct something, but staying silent because, let's be real, that's his job on the line. That awkward silence says more than any rebuttal ever could.
We're in this complete shifting of the polls where the Republicans now are in favor of free speech. The Republicans want to end the wars. They want to stop contributing to foreign countries. They want comedy to be comedy again. They don't want restrictions on people's behavior and thinking.
Yeah.
And the Democrats have developed this sort of like cult-like idea of what everyone should accept and what's normal and what's not normal and what needs to be elevated in our population and what needs to be ignored. And it's just like...
It's actually wild that Joe still pushes the idea that Republicans are somehow anti-war and champions of free speech. Like, come on, Joe. Even if you completely ignore the massive military budget increases and nonstop war rhetoric toward Iran, the receipts are still everywhere. Foreign students getting threatened with deportation for speaking out. Protests getting shut down, voices getting silenced. There's no shortage of proof that censorship and war support are alive and well, yet Joe just breezes past all of it like it doesn't exist. A lot of people genuinely believe Joe knows all this already. They think he's aware of the contradictions, but chooses to ignore them because acknowledging reality could threaten his comfortable new life in Austin. That's the part that really sticks. Joe clearly knows which side he leans toward now, yet somehow still insists he's in the center. Sometimes literally seconds after taking a strong stance. That contradiction alone drives listeners crazy. So yeah, it's a lot of political jargon coming from a guy who used to talk about grizzly bears, bow hunting, and ancient civilizations unlocking hidden knowledge. That curiosity feels completely gone now. And look, most people wouldn't even mind Joe talking politics if he did it in a level-headed way, but it doesn't feel like discussion anymore. It feels like pandering. Like he picked a side and decided to ride it no matter what. Some would call that selling out. But honestly, the political grifting isn't even Joe's worst moment lately. The most uncomfortable behavior shows up when legitimate, respected scientists sit across from him and challenge his favorite conspiracy theory.
God damn, you're ruining it for everybody that thinks in a left way. Like anybody who's reasonable, like a reasonable left-thinking person, which is most artists, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
And then you get to this point where you're like, no, I can't go along with you on all these things.
Yeah.
You guys you're just a bunch of fucking assholes who are using these subjects as a way where you can behave incredibly shitty, incredibly uncharitable, like vicious, mean, ostracizing people from society. I don't want any part of you. I don't want any part of the way you guys think and behave. And you to pretend that you're doing it for good, you're gluing yourself to the wall for climate change. The fuck you are.
Yeah.
You're just a nut. You're just a crazy, entitled nut, and you're fucking up society.
Yeah.
This is not the way that people should be behaving. And I can't believe it makes people go to the other. And the Republicans are smarter about it now in this day and age, because they're like, hey, we'll take you in. Hey, it's fine. You come over to us. You could say whatever you want. Comedy's back. You know?
It's a big ebb and flow to me. It's like some weird natural balance of like things shift a little bit to the left, things shift a little bit to the right.
But we got to hold the center.
The way Joe handled the Flint Dibble and Graham Hancock debate was straight up embarrassing. Flint brought real evidence, real field experience, and actual research. Meanwhile, Joe and Graham talked over him, interrupted constantly, and dismissed expertise like it didn't matter. And after that episode aired, Joe didn't just move on. He mocked Flint Dibble publicly for having cancer. That wasn't edgy. That wasn't funny. That was cruel. That moment alone changed how a lot of people see Joe Rogan forever. If you haven't watched Flint Dibble's full expose video yet, it's linked in the description below, and you absolutely should check it out. He breaks everything down calmly, clearly and completely dismantles Joe's behavior in a way that's impossible to ignore. What makes all of this worse is how recent it is. This isn't ancient history. Most of these moments happened within the last 4 or 5 months, which is why it really feels like Joe is hitting rock bottom right now. The sad part is, this stuff isn't entirely new. It's just gotten way more blatant. And if you're watching this, there's a good chance you were once a fan of the podcast, because it used to be genuinely great. Back then, Joe seemed grateful to be in the room with his guests. He listened. He let conversations breathe. Guests led the discussion instead of getting steamrolled. When Joe lived in Los Angeles, the guest list was stacked. Actors, scientists, artists, and thinkers were always in town and could casually stop by the studio while promoting projects. That energy just doesn't exist in Austin. Now, scroll through recent episodes and be honest. Most casual listeners would have to Google at least half the guests. Austin didn't elevate the show. It stalled it. Even comedians in Joe's own circle have openly trashed the city. Tim Dillon, Mark Normand, Shane Gillis, and Ari Shaffir have all publicly roasted Austin on different occasions with zero hesitation. At this point, it really feels like Joe Rogan and his once universally loved podcast have face-planted into rock bottom. Where it goes from here is anyone's guess. There are rumors about the mothership expanding to New York City, and that could change everything, or change nothing at all. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Drop your comments down below. I want to hear what you think, and I'll see you on the next one.